Hi all, I thought I'd do another video about the evolution of chess style, but instead of taking yet another Nimzovich game, I think we should visit the My System book directly for its structure. Okay, on Wiki it gives the structure as first covering the elements. This is the 21st century edition, so it's algebraic for the moves. Now the elements, actually this is an incomplete list given at Wiki. I've got 9 chapters for the elements. Center end development, okay, so that's pages 1 to 12, so 12 pages on the center end development. On open files it's 10 pages, 13 to 23. On the 7th and 8th ranks it's 8 pages, pages 23 to 31. Then the pass pawn is from page 31 to 53, so that's 22 pages about pass pawns. So a lot of significance was given by Nimzovich on pass pawns. On exchanging, which is a missing bit here actually, that's from 53 to 57, so 4 pages that were devoted to exchanging, when to exchange, favourably, etc. Okay. Then we have elements of endgame strategy from page 57 to 69, so that's 12 pages. Then we have the pin, which is from page 69 to 81, so that's about 12 pages. So discovered check as well, so this is in a different order actually to the book. Okay, so discovered check from 81 to 87, 6 pages, and the pawn chain is given a lot of significance from page 87 to 103. So Nimzovich covers those elements of positional play, but then in part 2, so that was part 1, in part 2 he shows that that's not enough to be aware of the elements. He's putting them all together, a bit like a composer in an orchestra. And the chapters within positional play, so we have positional play and the center, which I think is the key introduction. That's from pages 103 to 121. Then we have double pawns and restraint. So kind of, looking at restraint and prophylaxis. And then that's from page 121 to 137. So more than 10 pages on that. Then the isolated D pawn and its descendants. So Nimzovich looks in detail at that. Okay, that's for 10 pages, 137 to 147. Then the 2 bishops, so from 147 to 153, so 6 pages. Overprotection is given 6 pages actually, only, but it's mentioned a few times earlier on, so that's 153 to 159, 6 pages. Manoeuvring against weaknesses is given 8 pages, 159 to 167. Okay, so that's the breakdown of this classic book. Now the reason I'm doing this video, and you may think, well, this is really weird, it is because I consider My System as one of the most important books of all time written about chess. Now, as far as our Evolution of Style series, I'd like to draw attention in particular, I hope you get this book as well, I want to draw attention on the introduction chapter on positional play, because he does visit the idea of Steinitz and the accumulation of advantages, and how Taresh repackaged that for the general public, sort of diluting it. He described it as being diluted, but there are certain key statements made and expanded within this introduction. The first key statement was actually this relationship between the elements and positional play is not so straightforward as you would assume. The second statement basically is that if you want to improve your positional play, you've got to get rid of being bored with doing nothing in your game. Often there is a series of positional maneuvers which do nothing. So this idea of doing something needs to be challenged, and also not to overrate Steinitz's theory of the accumulation of small advantages. So he's saying that might be overrated. And he goes on to, in his third point, to say, in later points, key points here, why it's overrated. In fact, the third point addresses this. So here is why. He says that the original conception of positional play is based on the accumulation of small advantages only of second or third significance. He argues that of much greater importance is a prophylactic applied both externally and internally. Now, this is before condoms. He's not talking about condoms, okay? He's talking about the position security that you have on the board. So doing nothing, sometimes you're overprotecting key points, so you're sort of reducing risk of losing. You're not attacking, you're not defending, you're not accumulating. In fact, he calls accumulating like, you know, would you be impressed by a miser accumulating and winning like that? No, maybe not. So his new principle of overprotection, that's its definition and meaning, basically. A prophylactic applied internally and externally. So that's really the key point of this chapter on positional play. Now, if we go onto the other 2 points, point 4 is that alongside that prophylaxis idea is the idea of the collective mobility of a pawn mass. But the thing is, Philidor introduced us to the pawn mass and pawn mobility. So maybe, you know, Nimzovich is revisiting that. That's what Philidor was saying all along, to get your pawns going. You know, they're like the very life and soul of the game, and so restraint applied to the opponent's pawn structure and maximise the mobility of your pawn structure. And so you're sort of putting that side by side with the idea of prophylaxis. So that's point 4, and point 5 is about the centre, saying that, you know, it's really important to keep watch on the central territory, because he calls the centre the Balkans of the chessboard, and by that he means that trouble can break out at any time. So you've always got to be on the lookout for opportunities in the centre, like, you know, bishop b5, c3, d4, d5. Things can change in the centre, and you can sometimes be distracted by attacks. And only in the last British Championship, you know, I remember Andrew Martin saying in quite a few games about, you know, the GMs need to respect the centre here, and they're losing or something, you know, because they're not respecting the centre. So Nimzovich recognises the centre as well as prophylaxis, as well as pawn mass, as the key ingredients for successful, you know, positional play, basically. Point 6 is the leitmotif of correct strategy is the overprotection of the centre, and further, a systematically carried out centralisation of forces. So even wing attacks can be met by playing the centre. And sometimes, in point 7, he says you can even surrender the centre. So basically, he's made 7 points here. And then, you know, in his final note on this chapter, which is a key chapter, I think, he basically says, you know, first came Steinitz, that was a towering figure, and modern principles, but they couldn't become immediately that popular. But there followed Tarrasch, who took Steinitz's ideas, dished them up in a diluted form to the public taste. And now, well, this is actually emphasising that the deepest and greatest of Steinitz's ideas was in relationship with the centre. Okay. So I would recommend getting my system. So it looks at the elements, then it looks at positional play, and then, like we've been doing, we've been looking at illustrative games. The thing is, this book was first published in 1925. We're looking at 1929 Carlsbad, the last few videos. So Nimzovich was still at the peak of his powers. He did very well at Carlsbad, and he did a separate annotations book, which I also have. So this is really good stuff, and so really he's challenged this idea that chess is not just about the accumulation of advantages. There's this idea of prophylaxis, internally and externally. This idea of keeping hold of the centre and keep careful watch at all times. The idea of the pawn mobility, you know, maximising your pawn mobility, minimising the opponents. So all of these things are being put side by side to make up positional play. But a thorough understanding of all the elements is the prelude to all this, and the main elements that Nimzovich considered, you know, the centre development, open foals, 7th and 8th rank, the pass pawn, about exchanging elements of endgame strategy. He plus the pin, which was interesting because it's kind of tactical and strategical at the same time. The discover check I would consider very tactical. The pawn chain. So it's an interesting mixture when he covers the elements. So positional play. He's got positional play in the centre, that introduction and then this emphasis on the centre. The double pawns and restraints, the isolated D pawn and its descendants, the two bishops, then he covers overprotection, and then he covers finally manoeuvring against weaknesses. So this is it. This is the core of this book, My System. So I'd recommend you get it and have a look and see if it can improve your game a little bit, or ideas about how you approach positional play. Please leave any comments or questions on YouTube, and check out this wiki article as well, which has some of this noted. Thanks very much.